Let us begin the work together. Let us unite in common effort to chart a new course for America. This was the moment when the rise of the oceans began to slow and our planet began to heal. This was the moment, this was the time when we came together to remake this great nation.
Barack Obama, folks, entered the White House promising hope, change, unity, a new kind of American politics. His critics say he expanded executive power, fueled identity politics, weakened trust between Americans, and helped create the political backlash that ultimately produced President Trump.
There were so many expectations for Barack Obama, across the board, white, black, Hispanic, male, female, just because simply, of course, he was the first black president.
He is not the architect of the division that we have now. He is absolutely the catalyst of how we got here. This level of division is something we've never experienced in this nation. Did he really love this nation?
We have not really understood the amount and the level of destruction and chaos he has caused. Tonight, we are separating the symbolism from the substance and examining Barack Obama's real impact on America's politics, economy, and culture. Here to assist us with this portion of the expose is Tyrone Keys of Soldiers of Finance.
There is a case to be made for him rescuing the economy through policies that he put forth. Now, he paid for it to the tune of close to $1 trillion.
We have to ask a more difficult question. What exactly did he change? Ladies, let's really dig into this. His supporters say he rescued the economy, expanded healthcare, modernized the country, and inspired a new generation. His critics say he expanded executive power, fueled identity politics, weakened trust between Americans, and helped create the political backlash that ultimately produced President Trump. What say you? Tonight, we are separating the symbolism from the substance and examining Barack Obama's real impact on America's politics, economy, and culture. Let's dig in. Shelley, what are your thoughts on the promise of hope change in a post-racial America?
Right. So, of course, when Obama came in, I think the whole country we were excited in general, whether you voted for him or not. I think there was this sense of excitement in the air. Okay. That's number one. Number two, there were so many expectations for Barack Obama, across the board, white, black, Hispanic, male, female, just because simply, of course, he was the first black president. Now, the expectations, looking back as I was doing some digging in today, I think our expectations were too high. I think they were too high, and I think some of them were unrealistic. Having said that, that does not mean that Obama did not contribute to some of the political, cultural, economic turmoil that many people may still be finding themselves in.
All right. So, Nicole, in November 2008, 70% expected race relations to improve under his presidency. By 2016, 46% said his presidency had made race relations worse, while only 29% said it had made them better. What's your thoughts?
When you think about that particular time in America, we did not have the current animosity or the level of division that we have now. What changed? Well, Shelley's right. It was the hype. He was supposed to be the great savior. He could not speak a sentence without people frothing at the mouth, clapping hands. Oh, it's Barack. He went from absolute obscurity, a person who won a Senate seat because the guy who had it before him was cheating on his wife, and he was appointed, to this rock star who's Blackish. He's not a dark-skinned Black person. And then there was all this questions about birth certificate in Kenya and clucking chickens and a brother and all of this foolishness. But outside of that, America was really looking for someone to enhance what we already had. We didn't really have, this animosity between Blacks and whites. It was more have and have nots. And most people figured, he can't mess this up. How wrong were we? He is not the architect of the division that we have now. He is absolutely the catalyst of how we got here. He was the jet fuel that rocketed us well past MAGA, well past America First, to where we are now, where we're facing anti-Semitism, and we have this Black fatigue among Black people, let alone white people having Black fatigue. And then you have class warfare among white Americans. This level of division is something we've never experienced in this nation. It wasn't even this bad during Civil War times. How do we fix it? How did we get here? That's the winning question.
Yeah. Well, we're conservatives. We're all conservative here. But CNN asked a question. Why do conservatives consider Obama divisive? Take a look at this exchange. This is clip 2.
Why is Obama considered by a lot of conservatives, and maybe you're one of them, to be so incredibly divisive? Is it because he told people he was Black?
Right.
No, no, I think he's incredibly classy. He's a very eloquent speaker. I think there's a lot of things to credit him for.
Lydia,
I'm
how
saying
is
his
he
policies,
hold on.
And I will credit him for this as well. He said that he thinks America is great today. I think he said the U.S. is an undeniable force for good in the world. And I was glad to hear him say that, because when he was in office, he would go on these sort of tours essentially apologizing for America. And I look at the Democratic Party today, 36% of whom are not proud.
Last year, Donald Trump went to the Middle East.
All right, let's unpack that, because he did. I remember when he was in office and he did that apology tour. And I remember one actual when they filmed him, I believe he was in the Middle East, and he was apologizing for America being America. Do you guys remember that? Do you remember that, Nicole?
America, like every other nation, has made mistakes and has its flaws. In America, there's a failure to appreciate Europe's leading role in the world. Instead of celebrating your dynamic union and seeking to partner with you to meet common challenges, there have been times where America has shown arrogance and been dismissive, even derisive. 9/11 was an enormous trauma to our country. The fear and anger that it provoked was understandable. But in some cases, it led us to act contrary to our traditions and our ideals. We are taking concrete actions to change course. I have unequivocally prohibited the use of torture by the United States, and I have ordered the prison at Guantanamo Bay closed by early next year. While the United States has done much to promote peace and prosperity in the hemisphere, we have at times been disengaged, and at times we've sought to dictate our terms.
I remember that distinctly, where he bowed to some Saudi king or some Arab king somewhere, and the level of fury that bubbled up within conservative circles, within military circles. We have men and women whose blood still stains that sand, and you're over there bowing down. What kind of commander-in-chief are you? What kind of leader of the nation are you when you choose another people over the people that you were elected to protect and honor? This is a beginning, one of the major points of why people started looking at him differently. When all of the hype and all the shiny and the lights were turned off and it got down to brass tacks, did he really love this nation?
Right. It was the spring and summer of 2009.
He was in Cairo,
right?
Egypt.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It wasn't just Egypt. He went to France in April 3rd. He told the Europeans the U.S. had been arrogant and dismissive and derisive. And he reframed America as needing to atone to unilateralism under Bush.
Right.
Then in April 5th, he went to Prague, the Czech Republic, and he pushed the nuclear disarmament while critiquing past U.S. policies. And Shelley, as you mentioned, in June of that same year, he went to Egypt.
Yep. So I want to take a stab at Abby's question about why conservatives, I don't know how she said it, why conservatives seem to have a problem with or calling him divisive. Largely, I'll answer that, Abby, largely because of the cultural issues, number one, and the foreign presentation of America to the foreign countries. Those are the two broad categories, okay? Not to mention some of the domestic issues, but those are the two broad categories. Conservatives hotly detest when our president, legally, rightfully elected president that's supposed to be representing America as a strong country, when you go to a foreign country, it's like they're airing your dirty laundry, so to speak. Not only did you do that, Obama, you literally denounced, in a way, condemned America for all its ills on foreign soil, okay? So that's number one. The cultural issues, I think, are largely, of course, the LBGT, whatever they call, the trans, the gay marriage. That was particularly in his second administration took a stark turn. Okay, when you have these. Oh yeah, when he talked about having these, we are 5 days away. The 13 words I keep repeating. We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. Well, some of us over here, we ask, well, what does that mean? That's just not something to clap about. It may sound good coming out of your mouth eloquently as he was able to do, but what fundamental changes, what fundamental transformation? Because when you have a fundamental transformation, that means the literal foundations are going to change. To what? That was the question that many others may not have asked, but conservatives, by and large, we were asking that question.
Absolutely. Well, one of the fundamental changes is how he reinforced the belief that America's institutions were systemically hostile to Black folks. That was a huge one that he pushed. I mean, under President Obama, DEI skyrocketed. If you want to talk about that particularly, it was one of the huge things that his administration institutionalized. In 2011, Obama issued Executive Order 13583, establishing a coordinated federal initiative to promote diversity and inclusion throughout the federal workforce. All right. So he presented this as, moving a race conscious and identity conscious policies, not just in the workforce, but in universities. And he used activist organizations to do it. Eventually, what we see now, these major institutions are just pretty much indoctrination camps. Okay. But I want to get you ladies to push back on this, because supporters say that the initiative sought equal opportunity and a workforce drawing talent from every segment of the society. Okay. People are saying that, before this, what Obama brought in was the idea of going to areas where employers would not usually go to look for talent in these areas that were minority pushed and grab talent there instead of the traditional areas. What are your thoughts there, Nicole, on that debate?
Listen, talent doesn't hide. Talent is not under a pot somewhere or in an Amazon box in a warehouse somewhere. Talent always shows itself, whether you're Black, Chinese, it makes no difference. What this DEI mandate actually did is said, you can no longer hire the people who do it the best. You need to go out and find a Black person, a white woman, a gay white woman with striped hair. There was a checklist for the look of a person, not the skill of a person. As an employer, it puts your back against the wall. Do I hire the person that can do this job best for my company? No. By federal law, I can't. I have to hire someone who's far less talented, but if they dress like a cat, and it's a guy who's very gay, he's on that LGBTQIA spectrum, then I can hire him. My company's going to suffer. I may have to hire two people to do the job of one talented person, but I don't run afoul of these DEI rules and regulations. And what we have seen on whole, is as the country has self-corrected, you have seen companies say this DEI mandate from the Obama administration was harming companies across the board. The only people who really benefited from it were white women. Imagine that. The people who were supposed to be so far down the pecking order, it should not have impacted them per the rules. But you know what the government does when they start choosing their winners instead of letting cream rise to the top. Meritocracy is an American idea, and we should always stand on that. Shame on Barack Obama for ushering that to the bottom of the list.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of I'm sorry, Shelley, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to take his side, so to speak, like you said, push back. So what many of his supporters would say, I guess Obama himself, what he would say was that no, I'm digging into DEI or making it the forefront, if you will, this racial inequality, because we've kept these things swept under the carpet too long. So he wants to bring them to the fore and offer his solution to correct them. DEI, affirmative action, more mandates, things like that. I'm not saying they work. I'm just saying this is what his supporters would say was being done, in that there was the polling shows the downward trend, that as his administration continued up until the second one, the trends as far as the optimism of race relations went down. Now, the critics would say, pretty much on the conservative side or the right would say, well, he focused too much on those racial disparities to the point where the race relations just started falling apart. Whereas before that, they were in an upward trajectory as far as being more positive and optimistic throughout the country. So that's where the dichotomy comes in. Again, the polls don't necessarily tell you why the polls went down. They can mark the trends, but some researchers or some pollsters would say that it's multifaceted. Again, this is what the two sides by and large were saying. To your point, what his supporters might say versus what the opposition would say.
Absolutely. Very good point. Well, speaking of critics and supporters of former President Obama, we got to talk about his economic recovery or missed opportunity. That's the question. So, let's get into this. Here to assist us with this portion of the expose is Tyrone Keys of Soldiers of Finance. How are you, Tyrone?
Good. How y'all doing?
We are doing well. I'm doing well.
Good.
Audience will be loving it that you're here tonight.
Well, I'm happy to be back with y'all.
All right. Please shout out your channel and any other initiatives, agenda, events you have going on.
It's a lot going on. I'll just say Soldiers of Finance, please check it out. We appreciate that. And also, don't die without insurance. Let's go in that direction. Healthwealthlink.com. Don't be a burden to your family from beyond the grave. That's a very serious issue that we're dealing with and trying to help people out with. So
absolutely. Excellent. All right. Well, let's get right into this. Insurance goes right along with the idea of economics. Okay. Sure. Part of it. So that was right on time with that. And we're talking about Obama's economy. Take a look at this. This is clip 3.
And the reason some people think, wow, I don't know, I remember that economy when he first came in being pretty good. Yeah, it was pretty good because it was my economy. We had 75 straight months of job growth that I handed over to him. It wasn't something he did. I had spent 8 years cleaning up the mess that the Republicans had left me the last time. So just in case everybody has a hazy memory, he didn't do nothing except those big tax cuts.
All right. So that was former President Obama. He is, of course, referring to President Trump and his economic recovery after Obama left office. And he's basically saying that Trump can't take credit. So let's dig into this. So let's talk about some of the facts. Obama did inherit what we call the Great Recession and a rapidly deteriorating labor market. The unemployment rate was at 7.8% in January 2009. It later peaked at 10% and stood at 4.7% in January of 2017. So that improvement is real. And you really can't deny that. So, want to start off with you, Tyrone. Did Obama rescue the economy, or did the natural recovery of the American economy rescue Obama's legacy?
Actually, there is a case to be made for him rescuing the economy through policies that he put forth. Now, he paid for it to the tune of close to $1 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
And that $1 trillion came in the form of bank bailouts, with the TARP money, auto industry bailouts as well. So there was a lot of money put out there on the street. And this taxpayer money, Obama left with $8 trillion. He had an $8 trillion increase over the course of his 2 terms in the national debt. Now, to be totally fair, Trump's first term had close to $8 trillion spent, and Biden's only term had a little over $7 trillion spent without the job increases that we saw under Obama. Now, as these presidents as the time increases, okay, you're out of office in 2016 and a lot of time has passed, people tend to look at them more objectively. Now, it is also true that with he increased the national debt. We find ourselves now hovering just over $40 trillion in debt. That has devalued the dollar, played a role in devaluing the dollar tremendously. So he's not lying when he said they had 75 months of job growth, but it's Obama. He's not telling the entire truth, because what you have to add is the fact that, yeah, when you put $1 trillion out there on the street and you bail banks out instead of the people who were ultimately foreclosed on, then, think about this now. So the banks got made whole with taxpayer money, and they still prosecuted just over 1 million foreclosures. So they got to start all those loans back up. Now, at that time, I pushed for bailout money to be sent, well, not sent to people that were getting foreclosed on, but sent to the banks to cover amounts in arrears. That would have made the banks whole, and it would have prevented the foreclosures.
Absolutely.
But here we are.
And to your point about the foreclosures, Tyrone, during that crisis, the banks were made whole, like you said, but the individual homeowners they still lost generational wealth, right? They've lost opportunities from being a homeowner. That a lot of times people use their home as an investment for furthering their wealth and assets. They lost out on that. So that's what I mean when I said earlier, some people are still reeling the consequences or the outcomes from that financial crisis.
And Obama engaged in crony capitalism to make these things happen. I'm a big fan of capitalism, but capitalism means when you take risk, then you have to suffer the consequences of those risks when things go south. And that's not what happened in 2008.
Yeah, well, one thing that I had a question about is a lot of people, particularly the middle class, felt a very heavy weight under Obama's presidency. So yes, we did see, he did inherit, a recession. And by the end, he had some more positive numbers. But I mean, middle class people, still had a very bad taste in their mouth when it comes to Obama, particularly when you talk about black middle class. The black middle class was crushed under his presidency. Do you agree with that? And stagnant wages, skyrocketing costs, and some people say the recovery was a lot slower than it should have been.
Well,
What are your thoughts there?
Obama was not a big proponent of uh, bringing jobs back to America. He
Mhm.
maintained that course where we did a lot of outsourcing overseas, um, and that definitely impacted uh, the American middle class, and unfortunately, blacks in particular. Obama, he had a chance to be a real transformational guy, but he chose to go in a different direction. There are some great things about his economy. I won't lie, and then there are some bad things about his economy. It's mixed economically speaking, to be quite honest with you. But Herbert Hoover, he was not. Herbert Hoover being the guy that a lot of people think laid the groundwork for some tough economic times in America. Um, so I think that the crony capitalism piece is something that we need to move beyond. But if you look at the raw data, Obama, Biden, and Trump first term, they raised the debt by approximately the same amount. Uh, Obama got more bang for the buck out of it economically.
I don't
Mm.
know. I think I missed all the good Obama economic recovery. I didn't get any of that. It didn't trickle down to me. I caught none of that. What I did catch was that, at the beginning of the post-war economy, so people keep saying, oh, it's a recession, recession. We were coming out of Iraq. We were coming out of Afghanistan. Every time America comes out of war, there's an economic stymie every single time. There's not been one war we come out of like, woohoo, our economy's great. Never. So we had to kind of rebuild ourselves in a way. What he did is he, flooded the federal workforce. That's what you do with college graduates who need a job, right? They can't go back home to
A-
mom. They have to have somewhere to work.
Actually, Obama's federal workforce shrank.
Not until
He,
his second term.
but
The first term,
overall,
he
his federal
overall, but
workforce
his
shrank.
first term, he hired anybody with a heartbeat. This was one way to stimulate the economy, and all presidents would do that. The federal workforce, stimulating the federal workforce, hiring people to work for the Fed is an easy way to get people working again. Very easy way to get people working again. The other thing that happened, we're not even going to talk about the Bush era, as they call it tax breaks, I call it tax relief. He renewed it twice. The third time he refused to renew it. However, when you think about, I think it was like a January when everybody who has a paycheck looked at their paycheck and said, what the hell happened here? Because our FICA, your Social Security tax, was at 6.2 for a very long time. That was the standard rate. Then it dropped to 4.2 to stimulate the economy, to put more of your money in your own pocket. This is not them giving us a bonus. This is us keeping our money.
Well, that's
He
true.
did not renew
Uh,
that. And that 2% hit the black middle class like two uppercuts and a jab. It was devastating because most people who are not political were not listening for that. They didn't see it coming. They knew they got a paycheck and it was significantly different than it should have been. You
well,
saw it all over social media. People were like, what the hell is going on? What's going on is the president that you put so much hope and faith in, the president who's been selling you this line of shiny goods, just put his hand in your pocket up to the elbow. What are you going to do about it?
well, I
How are you
thought
going to
that
feed your children?
it was interesting that at the end of the clip you played, he kind of indicted Trump for tax cuts. Part of the American Recovery Act was that Obama signed was tax cuts. So
Mhm.
that was one way that he stimulated the economy. Look, there is a lot to indict Obama on. Okay, I did not vote for him, and I'm glad I didn't. All right, but when you talk about something as objective as the economy, uh, you know, not my guy. Clinton had a fantastic economy. Okay.
Mhm.
Not my guy, but it's mathematically undeniable.
So
Uh, so
So this was I guess my question. When I was looking at some of these different social issues and social economic factors. One of the things that stood out to me is particularly with Black unemployment. Talking about economy, that I read several sources. I want to say the Wall Street Journal, different sources. Even if you Googled it, said that over the course of Obama's tenure, the 2 terms, Black unemployment actually decreased, and it decreased to, and it was one of the largest decreases in, I guess, I don't know what the time factor was. I'll just say in history. So that was one thing. Okay. Number 2, he said that Black employment was across several different sectors. Now, on the other side, the wealth gap didn't necessarily shrink. It kind of remained stable throughout his terms, and that was some of the criticisms. So there were some missed opportunities there. But I literally walked away from what I was reading earlier today with the same word you just used. Obama had a mixed presidency, certainly a mixed effect on the economy. And then I want to go back very quickly, KJ, to our initial segment when we started about the hope and expectations. That's why I said maybe a big part of it is that we as the public, our expectations were unrealistic and too high when you really think about what presidents can or cannot do. We put a lot of emphasis on our president. Don't get me wrong, we do that. But actually, our emphasis should really be on the legislature.
Well, yeah.
So wait a minute. I want to back up just a little
Sure.
bit there. When we're talking about the Black unemployment rate, so what are you comparing it to? Are you comparing it to Trump's presidency or Bush's presidency, Clinton? What are you comparing the Black unemployment rate when you say it was the lowest? Because I didn't.
Okay, let me take. It was 2017. I think. Let me look at my notes. 2017. It had fallen to 7.8% from a high of 16.8% in March of 2010. So again, March 2010. So that it had fallen. So that was the time period. So I say in history. I wasn't sure about the history. I just added that. But that was the time period. But it did significantly fall during his tenure. So that's why I say I walked away with, this is a mixed kind of review, if you will, or a mixed outcome.
He lost 4 million jobs in the beginning during the Great Recession. By the end of his term, 15 million jobs have been created for roughly a net creation of 11 million jobs, which quite frankly eclipse even Clinton. So the Black unemployment rate would have come along with that. So yeah,
right. That's what I'm saying. I'm showing here now. It was around the same as Bush, however, and of course Trump had it really low. I think it was like 5% is what I'm showing here. But you're right, Shelley. Obama's Black unemployment rate fell from 16 to 17% in early 2010. I'm sorry, to about 7.5% to 8% by the end of his term. So he did see, a very low, a big dip or a big impact, but it was vastly, the gap when you compare it to the white rate was very much different. It was a very large gap. Whereas under Trump, you had a record low of 5.3% in 2019, which is the lowest in history, actually, at that time. When you compare it, I think the lower than that was back in 1972, is what I'm showing here. But when you look at the broader context, under Trump, Black-white gap narrowed more under Trump than it did under under Obama. Poverty rates for Black Americans also hit record lows under President Trump. And so I guess like you mentioned, it's very mixed. We have a very mixed comparison, but yeah.
Well, the biggest indictment on President Obama is Obamacare.
Exactly.
That has done the exact opposite of what it was billed to do. And they rammed that thing through, and they had so many theatrics about it. Remember Nancy Pelosi marching across
We
the
got to we
street
got to
and
pass the bill before we can let you know what's
find
in it.
out what's in it, all that garbage. When the actual solutions to the problem, if they had implemented tort reform, interstate insurance sales, medical insurance sales, breaking up those state monopolies, doing things like that, price transparency on a national level, healthcare would be significantly less expensive. So to me, that is a huge indictment on his presidency in terms of the economy. And here's why. The absolute, well, let's put it this way, healthcare costs are inflating faster than all other goods and services combined. And that is a direct result of Obamacare.
Absolutely.
Well, and what you mentioned, it's an indictment on his economy, but I think it's even more so an indictment on how he expanded executive power.
There you are.
Okay. This is another part of the political transformation that we saw under him. Okay. So, again, as you mentioned, this Affordable Care Act, this was this defining domestic achievement. And it's an indictment on how he totally changed politics with this. He normalized a style of governance in which presidents increasingly attempt to achieve major policy objectives through executive agencies when Congress refuses to act. This was one of his big things, not only with this ACA, but DACA.
Yes.
DACA. He established DACA through a Department of Homeland Security memorandum in June 2012 rather than through legislation passed by Congress. Another thing we saw under him was the explosion of these agencies and civil servants actually putting together legislation, which was another big power move that he created. And we still have it today. This is what we saw President Trump trying to use Doge to kind of get rid of a lot of this government bloat or largesse.
No,
Agreed.
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely
Yeah.
right. So, uh, I think that again with the healthcare piece, that was a lot of damage done. That's we're still dealing with. Okay,
Right.
and
know,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
a lot of what is in the ACA was developed by Hillary Clinton when her husband Bill tasked her with figuring out the problem that we had with healthcare, which was pre-existing conditions. That was what everybody wanted to change, and nobody needed any other change other than pre-existing conditions. So if I was changing insurances and I had a serious health issue and insurance could not offer me that particular policy that I want based on that pre-existing condition, that could have been fixed legislatively in less than 2 weeks, 3 weeks in DC, could have been handled. But this is what I tell people all the time about politics. Your legislator, whoever they are under tremendous pressure from lobbies. Tremendous. Say what you want about United Healthcare. It is a behemoth. It is one of the most powerful lobbies on Capitol Hill. All of the PPP money, all of the money for healthcare across this United States during COVID funneled through the hands of United Healthcare. Those checks went to the United Healthcare parsed the checks. This is how big and how strong this company is. Using what Hillary had down as a blueprint, which people are saying was kind of Medicare for all-ish. I don't think it was that. I think it was a little bit more like Arkansas's Medicaid, where it gave parents a little bit more time to have their children on their insurance, which was important to some people whose children were having a hard time, finding jobs that had good insurance coverage. I thought that was fairly reasonable. But what it did is it limited the number of companies that offered insurance. And so when you take away the supply and the demand is very high, the prices go through the roof. And we've been experiencing that ever since. And it gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse every year as the market gets smaller and smaller. So that's just, basic economics. I think DACA also had a tremendous impact on our economy, because people who traditionally were not permitted to work in the United States were now all given permission to work in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So those jobs that we've always considered as low level, entry level jobs, McDonald's, grocery checkers, the cart corrallers at Walmart, low level managers, where we always saw children, who were not college bound. They go out, they get a job, they work hard, they become a shift manager, and the next thing they're a supervisor. Then there's a career path if you keep your head down and work hard. What we saw is people who are not legally in this country get into those positions, and many of them still hold those positions today. There has been no upward trajectory. They hold these positions. So where do these kids go who are not college bound? What do they do then? What's the next step for them? So we have this underclass, if you want to call it that, of people who are not permitted legally to be in the United States, but they're here and they're protected every 2 years under DACA and permitted to work here. Tell me how fair that is to young Tyrell, who's not college bound. He was a horrible student, doesn't want to go to college, and he just wants to get a job so he can save up enough money to go to welding school or some other thing. And he can't, because Miss Marisol from El Salvador is working the job, but by all rights should have been Tyrell's. And Miss Marisol's not giving the job up. Now what?
Yeah.
And that's where we found ourselves, maybe probably year 2 in Barack Obama's term or second term. And what that got us was a lot of activism from both sides. The leftists didn't like him. The conservatives didn't like him. And everybody was forming these little groups to come after him. We saw the onset of BLM. And then we got all of these, white kids for Obama who were coming out of the woodworker saying, you're not doing enough. Then we had the Spanish activists. You're not doing enough. DACA was part 1. He had another thing called DAPA, where it's supposed to have the parents stay. And that was successfully defeated. So this was a small part of a larger thing. Tyrone is right. Obamacare was horrible, but he had other horrible ideas to set America back, America's youth back, generations.
Well, what he did was he helped make, as I mentioned, he helped make unilateral governance a public governing philosophy. So, and some people, then this is the question whether or not this is a good thing. Now, I think most conservatives think it's a bad thing. But what he did was, if Congress didn't move, the White House would act. And what they do, they would act through these agencies, memorandums, and regulation. And so that delivered immediate political victories, but it also produced constitutional lawsuits. This is when when he did that DACA, I believe the Republicans took back the House that year. All right. So also there were constitutional lawsuits, unstable policy, and increasingly views that every election was this existential battle. This was going to be the end of the democracy. We got that term a lot under him. And so the long-term cost of bypassing Congress was that nothing remained settled. No institution remains trusted now. And each president now inherits a more powerful weapon than the president before him. And his presidency was, I would say, or argue, the onset of that philosophy.
Well, let me say this. And this is the boring life that I lead. I have read a biography, at least one, about every president. Okay. The worst president, in my estimation, was Woodrow Wilson. The best, in my estimation, was Theodore Roosevelt. So I look at these guys after they leave office clinically. Yes, DACA, bad. The attempt at letting the parents in, bad. It's also true that Trump might catch up with Obama in terms of the number of people he deported.
Right.
One of the reasons that I supported Trump is because, look, and I can walk and chew gum at the same time. I like the idea of no foreign war, no wars. I understand what's going on in Iran. Okay. And I agree with it. But it is also true that Barack Obama, now he was a hell of a drone warrior. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and look, let's be real. Obama take you out at a wedding, ring bearer, flower girl, caterer, DJ,
Mm-hmm.
everybody. Okay, so he was prosecuting the war on terror just in a different way. So again, I encourage folk to look. Because people always say, well, Trump's the worst president. That's because
Mm-hmm.
you think history started with your birth date.
Right.
Or, Trump's the best president. Again,
Mm-hmm.
you think history started with your birth date. But
Then
when
let me
they,
just ask you very
sure.
quickly:
Hmm.
why do you think Woodrow Wilson? Can
Hmm.
you give me some reason? Why do you think Woodrow Wilson is the worst president of our
Woodrow
lifetime?
Wilson was a virulent racist. He desegregated the civil service. He screamed Birth of a Nation in the White
Mhm.
House. And he also laid the groundwork for the United Nations. Uh, it was the League of Nations, but it
Mm-hmm.
was the same idea.
Right, right, right.
Uh, and some of there's some economic issues with him too that I could go into, but you need a whole pop and politics show for that. But last but not least, he had a damn stroke, and his wife was president for at least the
Mm-hmm.
last 18 months. Okay,
That caretaker.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
so there are a variety of and as far as Theodore Roosevelt, sure, the Monroe Doctrine named after James Monroe, but Roosevelt was the one that really put it into action and expanded the U.S. Navy. Um, his economy, his economic principles were really good. So I'm going to find a college to teach a history class at, and y'all can record it. I'll go into all that.
Now, see, I want to say really quickly, I personally believe Obama is the worst president in modern history, and the biggest reason is what I just said. I believe that he, as he mentioned, as Shelley always mentioned, he has fundamentally transformed our country and the way that our government works. I think the idea of with Obamacare, with DACA, with the way that he has increased the power of the executive, the way that he used executive agencies and the memorandums, and he has not only increased the power of the executive, but the way that he has I think that his administration was tantamount in pushing the distrust of many of our institutions. I think he is, and I think we have not really understood the amount and the level of destruction and chaos he has caused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me say that.
I want to add to this particular segment. I think FDR is one of the worst, and I'll tell you why. As it relates to the economy, if you
Mhm.
will, I think he was the impetus, the start of the great programs, the Social Security, Medicaid expansion, which I think also feeds into every president since then to expand the federal budget. Okay,
Mhm.
to expand federal spending, such that no matter what, whenever there is not an emergency, a national emergency, conservatives are cut spending. But let some emergency come up, conservatives they spend just as much or as regularly as the Democrats did that we just criticized. That's my little
Mhm.
libertarian bent.
Mhm.
However, those programs are still impacting us, and they will impact us for years to come. We still don't have a concerted effort with the Republican Congress and Senate to reduce that spending. President Trump, yes, he came in, doged, he did all of that, but and even in his first term, President Trump, he cut a lot of regulations, but that
Yeah.
has not stopped our government from expanding more and more, particularly as far as spending and even the executive orders. To date, or at least right now, I think President Trump and Obama kind of almost running neck and neck, if not 100 or so different executive orders over the course of Obama's term and then here to date. So that's the executive orders. Obama, I think, still beat out, I can't find my number. I think he still beat out Trump a little bit ahead, but Trump is still doing executive orders. I'm saying this to say this. again, we focus on, largely speaking, we focus on the president. The onus and the focus should be on our Congress, who has allowed all of these things to expand, to grow the budgets, because our Congress controls the purse. And our Congress, we the people, we have more say. Our Congress has more say than it has allowed. Congress has sat back and allowed agencies to expand. All these things increase, things like that. So the onus should be on the president. Again, our expectations as a country are off and misguided.
I would agree with that. And KJ, I would encourage you. All of the things you mentioned are valid. The one I would take exception to is the president's, or the executives, in the case of Obama, usurpation of power. That's exactly what the executive, judicial, and the legislative branches, they are all supposed to be constantly vying for power. The Congress under Obama, especially that Republican Congress, they were so afraid of being called racist that they backed off of really asserting themselves under Obama. So they fell down.
But even still, this is where I got to push back against you guys. He still did it. He still started this. This is what I'm saying. The structural damage that either happened under him or that was allowed under him, he did it. The structural damage that he was able to do, I believe, is far more damaging to anything that any president has allowed or done in modern history. He enlarged the presidential and administrative power. And even though like you said, we have three co-equal branches of government, but he was able to increase and accelerate that. Not only that, but with these identity politics, I don't think people have even started to understand.
And I think really, that's where he has
really
more,
push. Talk about how this has, weakened our country,
Yes,
weakened our confidence in institutions, and I think it has really done damage that we're still suffering from, and the generations to come will suffer from. DACA alone. You talk about this invasion under Biden and the border. DACA is, I think, caused more harm than even the open border. And now that's coming a lot from me, because I always talk about how the border was a terrible thing under Biden. But DACA, it has caused such harm to our country. The list goes on, and it was all under him.
Agreed. And it was just like, a wholesale amnesty.
Right.
No thought processes, no vetting, just wholesale amnesty. And I think that was horrible. But I think Tyrone had hit a key point in what he was saying, is that legislators were so afraid of pushing back against the Black man and being called racist. When we talk about how that ugly was bubbling up that we didn't have before. It was bubbling up. So you have a whole race of people who are saying, hey, this guy is doing us dirty, but we can't say anything, because if we say something, we're going to mortally offend these other people. Mm-hmm. And it creates hard feelings. You feel like your position in this country, your position in the world has been diminished simply and solely based on your skin tone. Your argument, your complaint may be absolutely valid, but you better not say nothing. Your white ass better not say nothing about this Black president. You better not. You'll be racist, and we'll shut your business down. We'll haunt your children and slap your wife. All hell's going to break loose. And I think that was the very beginning of people feeling marginalized. And then you have Black people who are saying, you don't have to walk on eggshells around me. You didn't walk on eggshells around me 4 years ago. Why are we doing the eggshell thing now? Well, you know why? Because now you have this powerful weapon called the Black card. Now look at us today, when the Black card has lost all but everything of its power. Black people are reeling, white people are reeling, and the Islamists are running through the country rampant. We are so busy trying to figure out how we got here. A whole other problem has cropped up. They have replaced Black people with brown people, and they have done it openly. DACA was not a warning shot. DACA was a fatal shot. Mm-hmm. Where we had people who were brought here as children. Okay. What are you mad at us for? Be mad at your mama. She's the one who brought you. And then he wants the parents to come to give them absolute amnesty too? Tell me that's not directly out of the leftist playbook. When we look at what Obama did, straight out of the leftist playbook, tax the rich. What did he do? Everybody, quote unquote, got some tax relief. Now, I didn't feel a thing. I'm just be honest with you. My economic things are personal. I can't vouch for nobody else, but I can tell you how Nicole Bennett's budget was during the Obama years. I had to tighten down the hatches tight. I felt no recovery. However, for those of you who did feel a little something, how long did it last? How long did you feel stimulated? It was short term. And we were right back to the position we were before. So when we look at the rise of Donald Trump, the rise of Donald Trump had nothing to do with him being, a billionaire playboy from New York City. It had everything to do with him saying what we felt, saying what all of us felt. We all felt pretty marginalized. We all felt like we were all getting treated some kind of way. And here comes the guy that says, I don't care if you're black or white. If you feel marginalized, say it. People love that, especially after 8 years of you better keep your mouth shut. And DACA was bullshit. And he said that openly. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah. And to round it out, as far as my contention, is the cultural impact that
That's the
Obama
impact.
had.
That's the part.
I mean, look at what he did for marriage, sexuality, and religion. I mean, he entered national politics opposing same-sex marriage, but then announced his support in 2012, and he became the first sitting president to do so. All right, so during his presidency, public support increased substantially, and the Supreme Court legalized same marriage. That changed everything. We have religious liberty debates, Christian institutions and businesses were impacted. The Democrat Party orthodoxy totally changed. Hollywood, corporate America, and pop culture. I mean, the list goes on. Now, to be fair, he didn't personally legalize same-sex marriage. Of course, the Supreme Court issued the ruling, but he was the catalyst. He was the move that started it all. And what are your thoughts there?
Well, I was always against same-sex marriage. Okay.
Right,
but
me too.
I understood
You had the civil unions,
that
right?
I don't say they're married.
the government cannot offer a benefit to some Americans and exclude others. We've been down that road, and that's why the Supreme Court ruled the way they did. And look, like 99% of things in America, that was an economic issue. Wealthy gay people said, hey, we want the opportunity to manage our money with the same benefits that are reserved for married couples. We want the tax benefits. We want it all. Okay. And fine. Anybody else gets swept up in this, two lesbians from East Baltimore want to get married. Fine. We don't care. We just want the financial benefits from it. So, okay. What happened after that culturally was it wasn't made clear that not at least not initially, that religious institutions, if they objected on the grounds of, they don't believe in same-sex relationships. Okay, well, you can do that as a religious institution. That was not made immediately clear. You had all kinds of things going on. At least up front, there was a lot of ambiguity. And then you got into the commercial aspect of it which, hey, look, the cake thing. Remember that the guy refused to bake
bakery.
The cake. And from the standpoint of a business owner, I got to be honest, I never understood that. Now, if you want me to put something lewd on the cake, I'm not doing that. All right. But I don't give a damn who you're married to, as long as your money is green. Okay. That's how I feel.
That's you. But what
personally.
About liberty? What about I should be able to say I want to do what I want to do?
If I go into some deep South diner and they say, we don't serve your kind, I'm just leaving. Okay, especially considering the fact that they're gonna have my food in the kitchen that I can't see. I'm just leaving. Okay. Now, you do that enough times, and your business is going to suffer. So I believe in letting the market handle that. So you want to bake the cake, you don't want to bake the cake, fine, I don't care. The market will eventually decide. The last thing I'll say culturally, Lewis Gates, Professor Gates, remember that whole thing?
Yes, the Cambridge.
That set the tone.
Yeah.
Because Gates was wrong as two left shoes. In fact, you're a professor and you don't understand that this cop making sure you own the house is a good thing. Okay. When all you had to do is show ID, and then here comes Obama, the cop acted stupidly. Really? Okay. That set the tone because everybody understood how ridiculous Gates's stance was. And here comes Obama to his defense. And that led to what Nicole and I were talking about, how now the Congress gets the sense of, oh, we better back off because we know which way this is going if we disagree with him.
Right.
And he set race relations back by a decade.
Oh,
absolutely.
Oh,
that
yeah.
he did.
Question.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the culture? Nicole, you want to go ahead?
The culture, I think that's Obama's, I guess, biggest negative input to the society or the country where we are today. I think the Gates, the Trayvon Martin, you had the Michael Brown. Now, granted, a lot of these incidents all occur, of course, under his tenure while he was in office, I'll say, right? But he didn't take the opportunity. He reverted, I guess, back to the Jeremiah Wright start and applied that to those particular incidents. Okay. So again, now we have, even President Trump, and presidents since then, jumping in on, I would call them isolated cultural events, right? And now we have social media. Social media was under Obama, but it was nowhere near like it is today on steroids, right? So again, that Obama's contribution, if you will, was to the culture, the issues, the LGBTQ, whatever. And then the last thing about that is that, again, this is going to go back, I call it my libertarian bent, the expansion of government into everything or many things where it doesn't need to be. Take the cake thing, right? Now, like I'm with you, Tyrone, let the market decide, but nobody should be forced to bake a cake. True. And you shouldn't be sued for not making one. I mean, so the government, again, got involved. What does that do? It expands the government power. And even on the conservative side, that was okay for government to get involved in that and expand because it was an issue that largely was supported on the conservative side. It should have been handled at the local level as far as the market, if you will. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Nicole, what are your thoughts on the cultural impact of Obama?
I think that's the one thing that where he promised transformational change. He was right. He changed the face of this nation for generations to come. And not only general race relations, but we now live in a time where your sexual orientation can be conflated with race. Like we're talking about the cake case. Yeah. If it was a black man and he went to a white bakery and they said no because you're black, that's something wholly different than if you're marrying Steve and your name is Ben and the baker says, I don't do gay folk. Gay and race, two wholly different things, but through that, the lens of all of those leftist organizations that were 100% applying the pressure to Barack Obama and his administration. We got you elected. This is what we want. And we all know how that works in politics. If somebody gets you 2% more vote here, 3% more vote there, then you kind of owe them a favor, right? All of these upstart leftist organizations were saying, you're not doing enough for me. You're not doing enough for my cause. And here he is, the closest thing, I would never call him a centrist, but he was definitely not as far leftist as the organizations that were applying the pressure. Even his own wife applying the pressure. As Debbie Downer as she is, she's absolutely an Eeyore, in everything that she does, but her absolute distaste for this nation and this nation's people were on full display, on absolute full display. So when you take all of that coming out of the White House, the apology tour, the First Lady's absolutely hatred of America and the distaste for all American people, then you add in all of these social issues that have risen to the top, because his administration won't put a lid on it. They're paying for now. This overtaking of the DSA, of the Democrat Party now, they earned this, and he was not the architect of it, but he was a poor steward of the party. He was an absolutely poor steward of party principles, and the party was changed then. The nation was changed then. Black America was changed. Again, people had high expectations. They thought that he would be a champion of HBCUs. He absolutely was not. Not under any kind of way, shape, or form. People thought that he would be, the kind of guy that, you want your son to be like, your daughter to marry. None of that. What we saw is the rise of a certain subculture in Black America. What used to bring us shame, little kids dressed in pajamas robbing a Walgreens, used to bring our community shame. Not anymore. Now, I'm not going to blame him for that, but a lot of things that we used to tamp down for our collective good, we no longer tamp down. It's just a free-for-all.
Right. And I'm going to go back to what I said about how he fundamentally transformed the structures and the institutions. Another one, when we talk about culture, is policing. I mean, under Obama, increasingly, he discussed police encounters not merely as isolated incidents of misconduct, but he then turned it in manifestations of larger historical and institutional patterns. So he encouraged a shift from asking what happened in that case to what does this case prove about America? And we are still dealing with this today. I mean, every police case is now turned into a huge issue for the country, for America, for race relations. He under Obama, and I think he was a huge. He was very he was very implementive in this. He has totally degraded policing in this country.
Oh yeah,
not just the actual institution, but the connection and the relationship between police and the communities that they encounter. Now it is far more confrontational, and he helped usher that in. He helped usher that in my opinion. So yeah,
and it hurts Black communities the worst. Okay, you now have in many cities in America the 1%, and I'm not talking about the billionaires. The bottom 1% are. Look what they've done to Towson Town Center. You got a 28% vacancy rate in a mall that used to be the jewel of Baltimore County. Okay, now people are staying away from the area. The Inner Harbor. When I worked on 1 East Pratt in the early 2000s, if you didn't get to the Gallery Mall by 11:30, you weren't getting a seat in that food court. Now that area is a literal ghost town. We had dinner at Morton's maybe about a year or so ago. There were 2 parties, well, 3, including us, in the entire restaurant. Okay. Wow. So crime has, as I said before, has a direct effect on the economy. And that is as a result of taking the teeth out of policing. Now police, they go to work and they say, you know what? Hell, I live in York, Pennsylvania, in a town full of cops. I'm good. I'm just going to do these 8 hours. Y'all can do whatever the hell you want. You made it clear that, you're not feeling this institution. Have it your way. Have it your way. And, you have a Brandon Scott that crows about, murders are down. Yeah. In the confines of Baltimore City, you just moved it out, a lot of it out into the surrounding counties. And I will give credit to Ivan Bates. He is doing a good job.
Who's that? I'm sorry. Who'd you say?
Ivan Bates.
Oh, Ivan Bates.
Yeah. The state's attorney in Baltimore City.
Yeah. Well, what I was thinking about when, particularly again, this is the area where I think Obama has either done or contributed to the most damage, continuing damage, the cultural aspects. One of the things about, we talk about policing and crime, Black community. John McWhorter, in I think one or two of his earlier books, I think it was either Losing the Race or what was the other one called? Winning the Race. He talked about, again, I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember exactly. He talked about policing and the Black community. Policing is going to be one of, if not the most strident area where Black relations or race relations in the police community, in the Black community and the police, is going to be a sort of a continuing thing. We got to get that right, because the crime in the Black communities, we know how devastating they are. Right now, McWhorter, to his credit, he acknowledges that racism can still exist. There are some bad police officers, but that is not the most significant contributor to Black crime and Black dysfunction in the community. It starts with primarily it's funded or fueled by the lack of family structure, things like that. That's number one, jobs and all of that.
And let me just really quickly. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Shelley.
Where Obama missed the opportunity, if you will, talking about missed opportunities, was that when he was in office, he and Michelle, beautiful family, married, children, all of that going for them, educated, they were married before they had children. Obama took those highly publicized racial incidents, again, Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Ferguson, even here, Freddie Gray in Baltimore. He took those incidents, and instead of clearly communicating, to the Black community, you cannot commit crimes. You're destroying your communities. You're destroying the infrastructure. You're destroying jobs and other opportunities that may be coming your way. If you come into contact with the police, comply and then follow up. He didn't do any of that. He could have done that very easily, clearly from his bully pulpit, as we say, and that message would have reverberated. And at the very least, it would have put him in a position of certainly of authority and respect, I think, because Black people, by and large, to this day, still love Obama and Michelle. Okay, so I think that would have carried over, and it would have done such significantly positive things for the Black community at large.
But what he did do, and that's why I wanted to jump in, but to the contrary, what he actually did was he helped change the unit of judgment from the individual officer and individual facts to the entire system and the entire racial group.
Exactly.
I mean, he single-handedly pretty much just tore up policing across America, particularly in urban areas where it's really most needed.
Yeah.
All right. And half the time, the narratives that he was painting were not even true.
Yeah.
As you mentioned with Ferguson, hands up, don't shoot. We know that was not true.
It is the mantra of a movement started in Ferguson, Missouri, after the shooting of unarmed Black teenager Michael Brown by white police officer Darren Wilson. Hands up, don't shoot spread across America like wildfire, from Ferguson to New York to Los Angeles. Hands up, don't shoot! To the halls of Congress, to the NFL football field, even CNN contributors throwing up their hands. There's only one problem.
It's no good. It's not true. It is either based on a lie or based on a misinterpretation of what happened.
Federal and local authorities say the evidence shows hands up, don't shoot didn't happen. The final Department of Justice report concludes Michael Brown's hands were not up in surrender when he was shot and killed by Officer Wilson. So where did it come from? Brown's friend the day of the shooting.
His weapon was already drawn when he got out the car. He shot again, and once my friend felt that shot, he turned around and he put his hands in the air, and he started to get down, but the officer still approached with his weapon drawn, and he fired several more shots.
Federal and local authorities say he's wrong, but there are still plenty in the protest movement who are convinced Brown had his hands up. But few have read the nearly 100-page report. We did. Here's what the witnesses closest to the incident who spoke to federal investigators and the grand jury say. Witness 102, a biracial male. For sure, that Brown's hands were not above his head. Witness 103, a black male, reluctant to meet with FBI agents stating snitches get stitches, eventually did talk. He had one of the best views of the shooting and says he did not see Brown's hands up and witnessed Brown moving fast towards Wilson. Witness 104, a biracial female with a clear view of the scene, says she heard the shots fired inside Wilson's car that hit Brown in the hand. She then saw Wilson hop out of the car and yell, "Stop, stop, stop." Brown ran, then turned around, and for a second began to raise his hands as though he considered surrendering, but then quickly balled up his fist and charged at Wilson. In a stunning admission, she told investigators Wilson waited a long time to fire his gun, adding, "She would have fired sooner." Witness 105, a 50-year-old black female, says she noticed Brown put his hands up for a brief moment, but then turned around, made a shuffling movement, and put his hands down in a running position and ran towards Wilson.
I would say, this is how I would say it. He certainly stoked the fires. He probably even laid the charcoal and lit the match for what was to become the BLM movement and the defund the police movement. He certainly, I would say that he did that. He put he gave the framework for those movements to proliferate and to destroy as they did.
I agree. I think one of the things also that we miss when we look outside of the Black community is that when you see these policing agencies recruiting, who are they recruiting? Who are they recruiting when the good guys say, I'm not coming over there because it's likely I'm going to get sued or I'm going to have to shoot someone to defend myself and it's going to cost me everything. You take a look at what's happening in Fort Worth, Texas now. This is wholly a white community where this is happening. They had a gay pride parade. There was a Christian street preacher. He was standing on the corner doing what he usually does. A police officer engages the Christian man and says, "What are you doing? You can't be here. Your speech is offensive. And if you don't shut up and leave, I will arrest you." She didn't say it once. She didn't say it twice. She said it 3 times. The third time he said, "Please do arrest me."
Yeah.
I'm a 30-year veteran of police force. My First Amendment right doesn't stop here in Fort Worth, Texas.
Right.
Lock me up. Lots explodes all over the internet. And what does the chief of police in Fort Worth come on and say? Well, we miscommunicated. You did not miscommunicate. What you did is you recruited a leftist who believes if your speech doesn't match hers and what her ideals are, you have no right to it. So what we're having are policing agencies that are now being chucked full of people who don't understand the First Amendment, who do not want us to have Second Amendment rights, and would be happy as a clam if you took your religion or your distrust in all things gay and furry and went back to your home. They don't want you to exist. And now these are the people who are sworn to protect and serve. This is the undergirding of what's bubbling up from this defund the police movement that Barack Obama and BLM had.
That's a great point. Yeah, because you can't, like you said, you go out there and you try to do good police work, and all you are is ever one misinterpretation away from a lawsuit, prison time, losing everything. And a lot of people are calculating, and this is by design. I think that, these things were done to discourage people from looking at policing as a profession. And also when they insisted on the body cameras, I said, okay, get ready. A couple of things are going to happen. Number one, a lot of people are getting breaks. Okay. Cops letting you off with a warning or a lecture. It's going to stop because they've got to be accountable now. That's number one. Number two is what you are going to find some cops behaving badly, but nowhere near the amount of U.S. citizens that are doing the craziest shit on these body cameras. And that is exactly what there are entire YouTube channels, dozens of them, devoted to just people acting crazy on police body camera.
Right. Yeah. Final question for you all tonight on this. Is America stronger, weaker, or simply different because of the Obama presidency? I'll start with you, Tyrone.
I don't think it really has changed. I mean, based on what he did economically, militarily, we are still the strongest in history. Culturally, no, we're weaker.
Okay. All right. Shelly, your thoughts.
Um,
Mhm.
okay, go
You
ahead.
got the question. You
No, go
got
ahead.
it. Oh,
Say it again.
is America stronger, weaker, or simply different because of the Obama presidency?
I think, again, as I said earlier, I think it's a mixed review. Okay. I think we may be weaker. To Tyrone's point, I understand that we are the strongest economically and militarily throughout the world, but I think domestically, because of our debt, our deficit, we are economically weaker, at least as it applies to everyday Americans. That's number one. Number two, our military is still the greatest, still the best. There are some areas in the military that need to be strengthened. I think President Trump, Pete Hegseth, they're trying to do their best to do that. Overall, as a country, no, I don't think. I think Obama, just as his tenure was mixed, his impact was mixed. And again, as I said earlier, the most significant negative impact that he had is on the culture and the cultural implications or issues in America that Americans may be experiencing, particularly, even more specifically, as it relates to race relations and the Black community. On the whole, I would say no, not because of Obama's presidency. No, there's a cumulative effect. If I had to put blame somewhere, I would say our Congress is still the primary culprit in helping to weaken us as a country, at least domestically.
All right. Same question for you, Nicole. Is America stronger, weaker, or simply different because of the Obama presidency?
I would like to say stronger, but here's why I won't. I'll say we're different. One of the things that I think that a lot of people miss that came out of Barack Obama's presidency is the rising up of young people, right? Prior to that, voting in presidential elections, you saw your 30s and 40s somethings doing it, not so many young people. But the push for them to turn out the collegiate vote, the push for them to get low propensity voters, Black people, Hispanic people, Native Americans, became so great that they became an active force in American politics. Now, I disagree wholeheartedly with their policy points because, again, it's pie in the sky and unicorns and rainbows and that kind of thing. Chocolate in your bed at night doesn't make good sense. However, it energized a part of America that was well asleep. Well asleep. In that regard, it made it a little bit stronger. I will say America is different. We know a lot more about American life than we ever hoped to know. There are things about America that, I never thought I would ever know. I never wanted to know that people dress up like cats and lick themselves publicly. I didn't want to know that. That was none of my damn business. I was out here living my best American life. However, I
didn't know
think,
the last part until now.
listen, you got to watch more of that Tyler Robinson case. It's coming. That stuff is coming out and it's going to make your hair straight. It is ridiculous what him and his so-called roommate did. But with all of that said, I think one of the things that is a blessing, some of the conversations we're having now needed to be had. And we danced around these topics. And some of this stuff needs to be said. We have to have some hard truths. We talk about Black fatigue all the time. The people who are causing the fatigue need to be called out by other Black Americans. We need to call them out. When you see young ladies walking in the airport and they got on a bonnet in their pajamas and they look like they just rolled out of bed, we need to have a conversation about that as a community. You want to be like that on your front porch, that's between you and your mama. But when you're out with other people, remember we used to have that rule, don't leave the house unless you're about to do something. Dress like somebody love you, right? Like you answer to somebody. Those are conversations we needed to have. Now, granted, I didn't see many bonnets prior to Barack Obama. I'm not saying he's responsible for the bonnet phase, but I'm just saying there was a great bubbling up of the downtrodden that happened. That's probably good politically. It gives us another voting base. However, culturally, he set us back so far. So far. And I don't know if we'll ever recover. America is just different. And we're going to have to learn how to live with these very, very fringy people that were in the shadows before.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you guys already know what I'm going to say. Now, I'm not saying that he left us powerless, but I do definitely believe he weakened us. That his administration, not the man, but his administration did weaken us. And I say that because I feel like, and I've read this this week, somebody said how America is not a people, it's not a place, it's an idea. It's an idea. And when we start to erode away at the idea, we don't have a country. Now, I'm not saying it's done, but I believe he was the catalyst to that. And because, and one of the largest things that he did to erode away at the idea of America is he has weakened our institutions. He has weakened us structurally. And that is what I think is a huge issue as far as why we are almost going into chaos. Okay. Russia seized Crimea. ISIS built a terrorist caliphate under him. Libya collapsed. Here at home, he expanded executive and agency power, bypassed Congress on major policies, increased government dependency, and helped turn our federal institutions into partisan battlegrounds. Many of our institutions are much weaker after his presidency, from the Congress to policing to our media and our media industrial complex. I mean, the list goes on. Trust in these institutions have declined. And then, as we all mentioned and agreed, racial and political division is worse than, I'll even argue, than it has ever been. So to me, he has certainly weakened us. Now, are we still a power on the world stage? Of course. But he has weakened us. And I pray that we can get back to where we were prior to his administration. But personally, I think it's just going to get worse. That's just me. So, folks, sound off in the chat. Let us know what you think. Do you believe that Obama impacted America in a positive way? We would love to hear from you. We'll maybe bring you up on the show and we'll debate that and discuss that. Let us know what you think. Sound off in the chat, and we will certainly read each and every comment. Yeah, until next time, count your blessings and live a life of purpose. Good night.